Okay, for this lecture video topic, we will still be talking about the connective tissue. Um, for the previous connective tissue lecture videos, we talked about the regular type of connective tissue as well as those connective tissues which can only be seen during the embryonic phase of the animal. And then so far, for the first topic or video at least of connective tissue, we talked about the regular types again, no? So these connective tissues, they're the ones who have a jelly-like until firm consistency, right? And then for the previous video, we talked about the type of connective tissue that is a little bit more special because the physical characteristic of this type of connective tissue is rigid and very hard, okay? Because the extracellular matrix of those connective tissues, specifically your supportive connective tissues, is actually very mineralized in the case of bone, or has proteoglycans in the case of cartilage. So it's like at the end of the spectrum of the hardness or softness of your connective tissue, right? For this video's topic, we will be talking about the other end of the spectrum, wherein the connective tissue that we're going to talk about is actually liquid, if not like jelly, super jelly like in substance. Okay, so more on the liquid side, okay, of the spectrum. So in the photos here, I think the specialized connective tissue that we're going to talk about is not in here nor in here, or maybe it is in here, but it's too small to be seen. So let us um, include or add new photos. So for this photo, you can see that, oh, there's the connective tissue that we talked about last time. We have our supportive connective tissue in the form of your cartilage and your bone and we can see, as we talked previously, your spongy type of bone actually has spaces. That's why it's spongy in nature. So these spaces are actually containing your hematopoietic connective tissue, which is one of the connective tissues that we're going to talk about today. So this, and this are actually your hematopoietic connective tissue. Specifically, it is your red bone marrow. Okay? So this red bone marrow tissue is a special type of connective tissue because it is almost liquid. Okay? While in this photo of a cross-section through an artery or a blood vessel, we have here this part is actually a uh, type also of specialized connective tissue, and is actually the final form or mature form of your hematopoietic tissue because, yes, this is actually your peripheral blood. Okay, so your peripheral blood and your bone marrow tissue or hematopoietic tissue are all under still under your special type of connective tissue. So in this general basis of what a connective tissue is for the cells, we can say that the type of cells that is included in this type of connective tissue would be, of course, your immune cells, because actually these monocytes, plasma cell, mast cell, and white blood cells, they actually came from the peripheral blood um, connective tissue. Okay, for the fibers, especially for the bone marrow, under your hematopoietic connective tissue, it still has your reticular framework or support, which is a type of very soft, easily breakable, friable type of framework. And this actually makes sense because if any of you have actually seen or seen red bone marrow or yellow marrow, it's actually almost liquid and very easy to squish, right? And for the fibers, quote unquote, of your actual peripheral blood, the one that is circulating to your blood vessels, the fiber, quote unquote, that you can say with can be fibrin, no, but it's actually very small in size, and then you can't actually visualize it under tissue sections. Okay. For the ground substance, yes, that's what we have been talking about earlier. The ground substance of your peripheral blood and your hematopoietic tissue um, is liquid in nature. or almost semi-liquid. Okay? For the main types of, for the functions of your connective tissue, your blood and your marrows are functioning both for the transport and defense, right? Transport of what? Especially for the peripheral blood, it transports your red blood cells, white blood cells, hormones, chemicals, nutrients, and other stuff which is needed by the body, which is transported by the blood from various parts of the body to another part. For example, oxygen, right? So the oxygenated blood should be able to reach the endpoints of the other parts of the body. While for the defense story, it basically pertains to the ability of the cellular components, especially the white blood cells of your peripheral blood, to mount immune defense against invaders and various injuries. Okay, so okay, um, out of all these functions of your connective tissue, your transport in defense is the one being carried the most by your blood and marrow. Okay, again, let's focus first on the hematopoietic connective tissue. When you say hematopoietic, it means tissue that is producing blood cells. So, if you find a section of a hematopoietic connective tissue, what you should see are your immature versions of your blood cells or peripheral blood cells. So, what are the types of hematopoietic connective tissue? We have two, the ones that you will see in the embryonic stage of the animal and the ones that you would see in the adult stage. No, for the embryonic stage, you would have these different areas, and it's actually listed from the area where there is the most hematopoiesis or production of blood, from the youngest or earliest stages until the late stages of the embryo. Okay, so as the embryo nears its adulthood, um, the production of blood cells will change from the yolk sac it until to the lymph thymus and lymph nodes. Okay, especially for your immune cells. For the adult site of your hematopoiesis or production of blood, you would have your red bone marrow and yellow bone marrow. Red and yellow typically describes their color when seen under the naked eye. Okay, so where do we find this yellow marrow and bone marrow? Okay, so for Weta 105, we will be focusing in the adult version of your hematopoietic connective tissue, because these other types of hematopoietic connective tissue will actually be more dealt on with detail in Veta 106 when we actually study these individual organs. Okay? Okay, let's go back to the marrows, no? So, the red bone marrow and yellow bone marrow, in fact, they can actually be seen at the same time in a single bone organ. The end points of a long bone, the intertrabecular spaces there, or the spaces between the spongy bone tissue, is actually filled up by your red marrow, while the central area, which has a bigger canal area, or a bigger intertrabecular space in the middle, would contain your yellow marrow. And actually, if you cut it crosswise, your red bone marrow and your yellow marrow can actually coexist as well. Okay? And actually, the yellow marrow is just the inactive form of your red marrow. And if it is inactive, it turns yellow because um, adipose cells or tissue actually infiltrates the red marrow. But first, let's try to see what the red marrow looks like under the microscope. So it actually looks like this. So these, areas are actually your red marrow. They are, as what you have said earlier, located in the intertrabecular spaces if of your spongy type of bone tissue. Remember last video, we talked about this tissue. So this time we are focusing on the in-betweens, okay? And here you can see that majority, if not all, or no, just majority of the cells have very large nuclei, and they are very darkly staining, mostly for purplish blue stain here as well. But still, there will be mature enough versions of your cells, blood cells, specifically those which do not have nuclei in their adult form, aka your red blood cells, already forming blood islands, and they are ready to be pushed into the blood vessels and become the peripheral blood. Okay, again, the more immature the blood cell, the more nuclei they have and the less cytoplasm they have and the more bluish they are and the bigger their whole cell sizes are. Okay, again, this would be sections through your bone marrow. And then if it becomes inactive and it's not actively making newer blood cells, then you would have your signet ring shaped cells, your adipose cells. Okay, so the addition of adipose cells will give this section a yellow color grossly. That's why it's called your yellow marrow. Okay. So how do we actually collect if we do not want to create tissue sections involving the bone? Because of course, in clinics, no, you wouldn't want to actually get a piece of bone section from your from your animal, right? So what you would have to do is you would have to pierce the bone in order to aspirate and suction um, your marrow, and then put whatever marrow that you will get into a slide and create a smear. And then after creating a smear, just like your tissue sections here, you would have to stain it. Okay. So a key point here is it's difficult to collect a bone marrow sample than a peripheral blood sample because it's easier to just puncture a vein that is located peripherally, right? But for the marrow, you really have to go deep, right? So you would have to anesthetize uh, your animal before you can collect marrow. Okay, so it is not usually done. So it's not routine, no, unless you have suspicions and you want to diagnose the marrow. Okay, you want to see the marrow. And so, if you finally get to prepare your marrow, you will see that the marrow smear or the bone marrow smear is actually has particles like this one. Okay, so these particles are still here because again, the marrow is not as liquid as your blood, right? There are components of it that is still supported by, as we told earlier, reticular fibers. Okay, and what else? Here in the smears of your marrow, bone marrow, and your peripheral blood later, it is important to know that the staining style is different, most likely, since the normal stain that we use for tissues, which are actually not just cells per se, but it contains fibers and other stuff, is H&E, right? Hematoxylin and eosin. For cytological preparations, and not tissue preparations, since it's very, very thin, you would only need a very quickly differentiating staining setup. And the usual stain that they use is the diff quick stain. So this diff quick stain setup or set of stains, so usually the goal is to differentiate the different cells from one another in the quickest way possible. So, for example, in H&E, the whole process will usually take 1.5 to 2 hours. But for your diff quick staining system, you would only have to dip the slides quickly once or twice. Thus, you can finish your staining method in as little as 5 minutes. Okay, so it's very quick, which makes sense because if you want to examine the blood smear or the marrow smear or the bone marrow smear of the animal, you would want to examine it as soon as possible. Okay. So what are the cell types that we can find in the bone marrow? Basically, it would be the same cell types that you will find in the peripheral blood smear, but they would be in their very immature form. Okay? or in a spectrum of the immature stages. Okay, so here you would see the different scientific names which corresponds to the process of making your RBCs, so erythro for that, granulo for the creation of granulocytes type of white blood cells, which would be your your neutrophil, eosinophil, and basophil, monocyto for the monocytes, lymphocyto for the lymphocytes, thrombocyto for the thrombocytes or platelets. Okay? So all of these, if you add poiesis at the end, it will pertain to the creation of those specific components of your blood cells. Okay? Poiesis means to make, no? It is also the same, it has the same root word as the term poetry, because as they say, when you write a poem, you are creating something out of nothing. There is a process that you're following. So this creation, this poesis, no, of a group of words is poetry. Okay, so in the case of blood, hemato, blood making. Okay, hematopoiesis. Okay, so here is a diagram of all the cells that we're actually gonna see in your hematopoietic, this upper part, as well as your peripheral blood cells. And just keep in mind that this is just a spectrum from the immature versions going into the mature versions. And what can we say about this? The immature blood cells, which is what we are supposed to see under normal circumstances in your bone marrow, would be these ones. And what can you say about it? They look kind of the same, right? And as we have described earlier, these cells would have your darkly staining large nuclei with very scanty cytoplasm. And the cells themselves are a little bit bigger and round in shape. Okay. More boring, no? Looks the same. Even if their endpoint mature cells are different looking. Okay, so they basically have a common lineage. Okay, so let's go to the cells of RBC production. So again, the earliest cells, the most immature, are big, bluish with large nuclei. And in the case of your RBC, this is very, very specific for the RBC only, especially for mammalian species. You would have the decrease in the size of the nucleus until it is actually gone. Okay? So this removal of your nucleus basically gives space for the additional hemoglobin that can be carried by your erythrocytes for more efficient oxygen transport for the mammalian species. Okay? And here, as you can see, different references, even if they are actually just following the same spectrum or stages from immature, bluish, big nucleated cells to unnucleated pink, small cells, they would tend to have different names depending on the references on or whoever is naming the cells, no? But what is just important, guys, is that you are able to recognize which ones are immature and which ones are mature, because we should know that in normal circumstances, these cells on the left side should be the ones that we are gonna see in the marrow, and these ones on the left side, especially these, the unnucleated ones, or the cells without nuclei, are the ones that we should be only seeing in your peripheral blood cells smear. Okay? How about granulocytopoiesis, or the creation of the granulocyte type of white blood cells? So these granulocytes are your neutro, baso, and eosinophil. Okay, so they are basically your white blood cells containing granules. So their names are basically a reflection of the color of the granule or the stain that they are taking up. For the neutrophil type of granulocyte, it's neutral because the granules are neutral staining. It is neither pink nor bluish or violet. Okay, it is transparent. So it is as if there is no granules. Okay, for the basophil, basically there are bluish basophilic stain loving granules. For the eosinophil, there are eosinophil-loving granules. So, pink granules, while for the basophil, there will be bluish to violetish granules. All of these granulocytes would have a change in their nucleus. No? So, in this time in white blood cells, there is no loss of nucleus. But you can see that from the big rounded nuclei or nucleus, it will turn into kidney shape and then eventually it will become elongated and then eventually it will become segmented or lobed. The more segmented or lobed the nuclei of your cells, the more mature they are. So again, same with your RBC story for the white blood cells or the granulocytes of your white blood cell. The left side is the one that should be more numerous or should be seen only in your bone marrow smears and section preparations. While the ones here on the left side, especially these last two, should only be seen under normal circumstances in the uh, peripheral blood smears. And if you see one of the other, an increase in the population of one in the, for example, in the other smear, it means there is something wrong. Okay? Again, more mature should be in the peripheral blood smear, less mature and still uh, uh, to differentiate should be seen in the bone marrow. Monocytosis basically is the same banana, but this time the endpoint is the monocyte, which actually becomes your macrophage when it goes to the nearby other tissues or connective tissues. So these macrophages, remember, they even change names depending on which organ they are found. Okay? So here is a very, very, very good diagram. It is one of my most favorite diagram when talking about the blood cell maturation because it is true to its size. And here you can see the different poesis or blood cell making depending on the lineage. And you can see which cells should only be seen in the bone marrow, in the ones that are released by the bone marrow, ones that are seen within the peripheral blood smear or within the blood vessels, and ones which are seen in the which can traverse into the surrounding connective tissues or other tissues. And here you can see, from same looking purple big nucleated cells until the nuclei become more segmented or whatever, and the granules become differently colored, or the cells, as in with your RBC, the nuclei is gone, or the nuclei become segmented, or in the case of your lymphocytes, the nucleus stays the same, but the actual cell becomes smaller. And then for the thrombocytes or for the platelets, you would have your megakaryocyte, a very, very big cell, which would give off platelets, no? It's a cellular fragments will actually turn into the platelets, which is responsible for blood clotting. Okay? So again, I highly recommend to master this slide so that the whole story of this whole topic is in this slide actually. Okay? Again, these are your bone marrow and this is your yellow bone marrow, and keep in mind that your yellow bone marrow can actually become your red bone marrow if it wants to be active, and it wants to become inactive, it will turn into your yellow bone marrow. Again, it's quite difficult to collect. These are actual examples of your bone marrow smears. So here you can see that the smear is really bluish, and still you can see a lot of um, large nucleated bluish staining cells. And here you can see in the blood marrow smear a big cell. Most likely, again, this would be the cell which will eventually give off your thrombocyte, okay, or your platelets. And then you would also have here your um, precursor cells of your white blood cells, right? And here you can see your almost mature versions of your most likely neutrophil. So again, this is from your bone marrow, and it figures because there are a lot of immature cells. Here is again, bone marrow aspirate, and here you can see immature red blood cells. And again, it's quite difficult to distinguish the immature red blood cell from the immature white blood cells since they are somewhat similar looking, but the key point is they are basophilic and bluish staining. Okay, and if you see a lot of these in the in the bone marrow smear, it is normal. Now, let's go to the peripheral blood. For the peripheral blood, uh, we are still gonna usually you will have to make smears, no? So these blood smears, this time you won't have to um, bore a hole in your long bone because this peripheral blood is easily collected via your peripheral blood vessels. So you just have to put a drop of blood here and smear it, and then you would have your feathered edge. So the monolayer is in here as well as in the feathered edge. In the laboratory, it's highly recommended to view and look for cells in this area because this area will also be the one which would contain a lot of the white blood cells, because as we have talked about earlier, your white blood cells are quite bigger than your RBCs. So they usually get concentrated in this area and they come in a single layer. Okay, and again it will be stained by your diff quick staining solution as well, and I highly recommend, especially if you become experts, to use the high power objective to examine your blood cells. But the best one to use actually is your oil objective. But if you become more accustomed to viewing the different white blood cells, the high power objective will be enough. So try to confirm this in the laboratory. Okay. Again, this is the same uh, cell map that we viewed earlier, and this time we are expecting to see these cells in the blood smear because they are the mature forms, and normally they should be found in the peripheral blood because they have already been released by the bone marrow. So when you are examining the peripheral blood, you will most likely also prepare a blood sample in a very small straw of glass. So it's called your hematocrit tube, and it will be put in a machine which will spin it very fast, and it will basically separate the different components of your blood. The extracellular matrix or the plasma is liquid, and it contains all the chemical components, the hormones, etc., everything else except the cellular component. The cellular component is actually here in the buffy coat and the packed red cells. The buffy coat contains your platelets and all the different types of the white blood cells. And it's just 1% of the whole blood, imagine, while the 44% is your red blood cells. So again, all of this is in the buffy coat, in that very thin subsection, while this one constitutes almost half. Okay? So I hope you appreciate that. How much blood cells we have as compared with white blood cells. Okay? Your platelets will also be found in the buffy coat. Okay, for the RBCs, okay, so what's interesting for us veterinarians is that the RBCs can actually come in different shapes and sizes depending on the species. But the commonality in mammalian species is that, again, there is no nucleus, okay? Instead, for the canine RBCs, there is a depression in the middle which gives a central paleness, central pallor, as seen here, very pronounced. But in other species, this is not as pronounced. In equine, a species difference would be there. It is common for equine blood to have rouleau formation or stacking formation of the RBCs. For feline, it basically looks like your canine, but not as much pronounced pale centers, so no pale centers. For the bovine, there would be a normal manifestation of slight anisokaryosis or slight size difference in your RBCs, and in the calf, there will even be differences in the shape. Okay? This also holds true with your goat, wherein the shape differences is much, much more pronounced. And there is also size difference. So for size difference, the technical term for that is anisocytosis. While for the shape difference, the technical term for that is poikilocytosis. Okay? What about for the camelid species? Ooh, so cute. When we say camelids, it's the camels and it's close species such as your alpaca, your llama, right? So what can you say about the sheep? It is what instead of round then biconcave, they are elliptical, ellipsoid in shape, no? So this is apparently because the RBCs of your camelid species are basically bigger and has a higher ability to carry a hemoglobin, no? It can carry a lot more hemoglobin than your other species. And this makes sense because these type of animals, they are the ones which are usually seen in elevated areas or mountains where there is less concentrations of oxygen in the air. Thus, they have to be more wise about how they can store and exchange it. Okay? What about this one? Oh, this organelle, the nucleus are back, right? So apparently, in non-mammalian species, the metabolism is compensated in some other physiological mechanisms such that the RBCs of those species do not need to let go of their nuclei, right? Because for the mammalian species, the nuclei got removed eventually because there was a need to provide more space for carrying hemoglobin. But apparently, in the case of your non-mammalian species, especially your avian species, there is no need for that. They have other things to compensate for the high metabolism. So, they have to have the nucleus to provide power, and still they are able to provide oxygen for the animal. Okay? So, for the peripheral blood, for the specific white blood cells this time, here again, the most common type of white blood cell that you can find in the peripheral blood smear would be your neutrophils. Okay? So if you are viewing your peripheral blood smear and if you see a white blood cell, most likely it will be your neutrophil, again characterized by the segmented or lobe nucleus. Okay? And the neutral or transparent cytoplasmic granules. Okay? And again, your neutrophils basically function when you see a lot of this. It means your body is fighting off some sort of infection brought about by bacteria. Okay? And it is usually for the acute type of inflammation because the neutrophils are the ones that will actually the quote unquote first responders of your white blood cells. Okay? If the infection is a little bit more chronic or late stage, then you would see a lot of lymphocytes instead. And that's why in tissue sections, whenever there is a chronic inflammation, you would see more lymphocytes instead of neutrophils. But if the inflammation is just starting or it is acute, then you would see your more of your neutrophils. But anyway, both of these fight infection and bacteria. For the lymphocytes, they are more also for the virus, okay, against virus. For monocytes, it's the same. So after your lymphocytes, you would have your monocytes, and these monocytes, a key characteristic of this is they are quite big. Okay, again, one technique is to use your RBCs in the background of your peripheral blood smears in order to determine the relative size of other structures in the same microscopic field. Just always remember that the size or the diameter of your RBCs, assuming that they are normal, is that they are 6 to 8 micrometers in diameter. So from there, you can assume or estimate the size of other cells. Okay? For the monocyte, you can see that One monocyte is like 3 to 4 times the size of one RBC. While for your neutrophils and lymphocytes, it is not the case. It is almost just like 1 to 1.5 times the size of the RBC. Okay? So again, do not forget to uh, use your RBCs as a clue to determine which type of white blood cell you are looking at under the microscope. Finally, we have these three. We have your eosinophils, your basophils, and your thrombocytes, aka your platelets. For the eosinophils, they are more numerous than your basophils. So the commonality between these two is that they would have granules. The only difference is that the eosinophils would have pink granules, your basophils would have your bluish to violet-ish colored granules. Okay? But the key point is, um, the eosinophils, if you see a granulocyte or a granulated white blood cell, it is most likely your eosinophil just because they are more, they have a higher population in normal cases. Okay. What else? So pink granules, and then a special characteristic of this in your equine species is that the granules of the eosinophils of your equine are so big and plump, and it actually uh, forms a grape-like structure. Okay, and we have actual slides in the laboratory. Make sure you get to see this very cute equine eosinophils. For the basophils again, if you see that the staining is really dark blue, then most likely it is your basophil. But if you're seeing a lot of them, and you think that your animal is not experiencing any allergic reaction at the moment, then maybe there's something wrong in the staining. It is quite possible. So always check the overall staining of your blood smears, especially in old preparations, because the blue to violet stain is always the one that is first to fade more than the pink staining, okay? So please be very careful when trying to interpret old blood smears, okay? What's the difference between your eosinophil and basophil? Basically, both of them function against the same things, no, for allergy and against parasites. But for allergy, it would be the basophil that would specialize against allergens because it's the one, the granules of your basophil is the one that produces histamine and as well as heparin, substances which promotes inflammation and the chemotaxis of other cells that will help in the fight against the allergen. And for the eosinophils, it's basically more for anti-parasitic action. So you will know, no, if you see, and then eosinophil will be the ones that is usually seen in chronic reaction to allergy. Okay? If acute allergy is usually basophil. If chronic allergy, it will be a lot of eosinophil plus if there is a parasitic infection, there will be an increase in eosinophils. Okay? For the thrombocytes, basically they are like fragments of the cells of your megakaryocyte, but of course, do not expect and you're not supposed to see the actual megakaryocyte in the peripheral blood smear because the megakaryocyte remains within the bone marrow. Okay? It is only the thrombocytes which will travel and become platelets into the bloodstream. So as you can see, this is your RBC and they are even smaller than the RBCs. Okay? And they are very, very few. They do not even um, make up 1% of the total blood cells. Just 0.15%. Okay? Imagine, even less than your basophils. And for the non-mammalian white blood cells, again, the key point here is you would have your lymphocyte, eosinophil, monocyte, basophil, and platelets or thrombocytes. But for the neutrophil, it is replaced by another cell, the heterophil. So this is, it is not your neutrophil. So avian, so non-mammalian species, do not have neutrophil, they have heterophils instead. And because it's not a neutrophil anymore, the granules are not neutral staining anymore. They are readily seen under the microscope, and it is taking up stain this time around. But the function is almost the same as with your neutrophil. So you will know that these are the white blood cells of a non-mammalian species, most probably avian, because of the presence of nuclei in the RBCs in the background. Again, always use your RBC as a clue in the size and the type of species that you are looking at. Okay? For the platelets, you will notice that the platelets of the bird is bigger as compared to its RBC when compared with the ratio of the platelet size in the mammal, platelet to RBC ratio. Okay? Here you can see that the thrombocytes of your avian species or non-mammalian species is quite big and very rounded and really more efficient, and which makes sense because your non-mammalian species are very efficient blood clotters. They need this because again they have to maintain a very high metabolism and active lifestyle. Okay? If you want to know more about the different white blood cells and other cell component of the peripheral blood of non-mammalian species, iguana, reptiles, turtles, whatever, this link to a journal article is a very interesting read and will tell you more about that. Again, this is how a peripheral blood smear would look like. There would be a lot of RBCs or erythrocytes as compared with the actual white blood cell component. But the white blood cells is easily detected because of the presence of the blue staining nuclei, and they are relatively bigger than your RBCs. But be very observant about the other formations of the RBCs because they can also give you a clue of what specific species they are within the mammalian kingdom. Okay? If you want to practice looking at more blood smears virtually, here are other blood smears, virtual blood smears, wherein you can actually zoom in into the blood smears as if you're actually seeing a blood smear preparation under the microscope. So this is from the Michigan Histology Virtual Microscopy. And this one is from another website, again, another peripheral blood smear. And here, this link is basically a website which details how a blood smear is prepared from start and finish, and how all the things that we have learned today can actually be applied in a clinical setup. So, of course, maybe you will be dealing with this more in your physiology classes. But if you do not have your physiology or you're just curious about the actual clinical application of being able to identify these blood cells, just visit this web page. Okay, so that's all for this topic, and do not forget to accomplish the attendance form for your class if you haven't done so. Thank you.